Commander Yoon Hana moved through the shadows of the Vorthak capital city like a ghost. She wore the skin of a Vorthak female, but underneath she was pure human. Her team had been living on this world for 3 years, waiting for this moment. Round. "Leaders, report," she whispered into her hidden radio. "Team 1 in position at the military command center," came the first reply. "Team 2 ready at the power station," said another voice. "Team 3 has control of their communications," reported the third. Yoon smiled. The Vorthak Empire thought they were safe in their great cities. They had no idea that humans had been walking among them for years. Their strongest world was already under human control, and they did not even know it. On the other side of the galaxy, General Kim Woo-jin stood on the deck of a human transport ship. Around him, his soldiers prepared for battle. They called themselves the Iron Phoenixes, and they were the most feared fighters in human space. Each soldier was more than human now. Their bones were stronger than steel. Their muscles could crush stone. Their eyes could see in complete darkness. Their brains could think faster than any computer. They had been changed by 4 centuries of human science into something that aliens would think were gods of war. "General," said his aide, "the Vorthak fleet is coming. 10,000 ships, sir. They are calling it the Crimson Armada." Kim laughed. 10,000 ships to fight us? They should have brought more. The Vorthak Empire was proud and strong. They had conquered 100 worlds. Their warriors were fierce and brave. Their ships were armed with the best weapons they could build. They thought they were ready for anything. They were wrong. Admiral Kang Dae-ho watched the Vorthak fleet approach on his screens. The enemy ships moved in perfect lines, like they were marching in a parade. They flew slowly and carefully, staying in formation like they had been taught in their schools. "Dr. Park," he said, "what do you think of their tactics?" "Dr. Park." Somin looked at the enemy formation and shook her head. "They fight like they did 400 years ago. They have learned nothing new. They are like children playing with toys." The Vorthak had grown soft during the centuries of peace. They had forgotten how to fight real wars. They thought that having big ships and lots of weapons was enough. They did not understand that war was about more than just firepower. "Captain." Lee Tae-wook flew his ghost dancer through the enemy fleet like a needle through cloth. His ship was invisible to their sensors. It could phase through solid matter. It could strike like lightning and vanish like smoke. Behind him flew 50 other human pilots. Each one could do things with their ships that the Vorthak thought were impossible. They moved through space like dancers, appearing and disappearing, striking from every direction at once. The Vorthak fleet began to fall apart. Ships exploded without warning. Others simply disappeared, teleported away by human technology. The perfect formations broke into chaos as captains tried to fight enemies they could not see. On the Vorthak homeworld, Commander Yoon gave the signal. Her teams moved like shadows through the alien city. The power went out. The communications went dead. The military command center fell silent. In the darkness, the Vorthak citizens heard a voice speaking in their own language. It came from everywhere, at once from radios and speakers throughout the city. "People of the Vorthak Empire," the voice said. "This is President Choi Min-ho of Earth. We have returned. Your leaders betrayed us 400 years ago. They called us weak. They laughed when we left. We remember everything." General Kim's Iron Phoenixes landed on the surface of the Vorthak military base. The enemy soldiers came out to fight them, roaring their war cries and firing their weapons. They were brave and fierce just as they had always been. It did not matter. The human soldiers moved faster than the eye could follow. They dodged bullets like they were raindrops. Their own weapons fired beams of pure energy that cut through Vorthak armor like it was paper. But the worst part was not the weapons. The worst part was the fear. The Iron Phoenixes had learned how to use terror as a weapon. They could make their enemies see nightmares. They could fill the bravest warrior with horror that froze his blood. They could make entire armies run away, just by being there. The Vorthak soldiers began to scream. They dropped their weapons and ran. These were warriors who had never known fear, but now they fled like frightened children from monsters in the dark. "Impossible," whispered the Vorthak general, watching his troops break and run. What are these humans? What have they become? The answer was simple. They had become everything they needed to be. On Earth, President Choi sat in his office, watching. Reports from across the galaxy. The other alien species were starting to panic. The click swarms were mobilizing their billion-strong armies. The Luminari were charging their energy weapons. The crystalline Nexari were preparing their reality-bending. A technology, sir, said his assistant. They are forming an alliance against us. All 7 species are working together for the first time in centuries. President Choi nodded calmly. Good. It will be easier to deal with them all at once. His assistant looked surprised. Sir, they have thousands of worlds and trillions of soldiers. Are you sure we can handle them all? The president smiled and looked out his window at the earth below. The sky was filled with human ships leaving for battle. Not hundreds or thousands of ships, but millions. Ships that had been hidden, in folded space waiting for this moment. My dear friend, President Choi said softly, they think they know how many humans there are. They think Earth is just one small world. They have no idea how wrong they are. Dr. Park So-min worked in her laboratory, preparing the final phase of humanity's plan. She had spent decades creating weapons that did not just destroy bodies, but destroyed the very idea of her enemies. Weapons that could erase things from reality itself. The Luminari think they are safe because they are made of energy, she said to her assistant. They do not know that we have learned to weaponize dark matter. The Nexari think their crystal technology is unbeatable. They do not know that we can shatter the laws of physics themselves. Captain Lee led his squadron in an attack on a Nexari, Crystal Fortress. The enemy fired their reality shaper weapons, trying to make the human ship simply stop existing. Lee watched the beams of twisted spacetime coming toward him and laughed. His ship absorbed the reality-bending energy and used it to become stronger. The other human ships did the same. The Nexari weapons that should have erased them from the universe instead made them more real, more solid, more deadly. Impossible, screamed the Nexari commander. Those weapons should have destroyed them completely. But humans had spent 400 years learning to turn their enemies' strengths into weaknesses. Every alien advantage became a human victory. The Battle of Kepler Station was the first time all 7 alien species fought together against humanity. They sent their combined fleets, millions of ships with the best technology they had. They were sure that working together, they could crush the returning humans. Admiral Kang met them with just 1,000 human ships. The aliens attacked from all sides, using every weapon they had. Energy beams that could melt planets, swarms of fighter craft that blocked out the stars, reality-bending attacks that tried to make the human fleet simply not exist. The human ships took every hit and kept fighting. Their hulls were made from materials that grew stronger when attacked. Their shields fed on enemy fire and turned it into power for their own weapons. Their crews were protected by technology that the aliens could not even understand. When the smoke cleared, the alien fleet was gone. Some ships had been destroyed. Others had been teleported into empty space, light years from anywhere. Still, others had simply been made to forget they were in a battle and had flown home thinking they had won a great victory. The 1,000 human ships had not lost even one. Commander Yoon stood in the ruins of the Vorthak capital, watching alien. Civilians flee in terror, but she felt no joy in their fear. This was not what humans wanted. They did not want to be conquerors. They did not want to rule through terror. Admiral, she radioed to Kang, the enemy military forces are broken. Their governments are in chaos. What are your orders? Admiral Kang was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in a voice that was tired and sad. Begin Phase 2, Commander. It is time to show them what we really came here to do. The galaxy burned with the fires of war. But the humans were not finished. They had won every battle, defeated every enemy, broken every alliance against them. The alien species lay helpless before human power. Now came the hard part. Now came the part that would change everything forever. The children of Earth had returned to the galaxy, but they had not come as conquerors. They had come as gardeners, ready to plant the seeds of a new kind of civilization. The galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Kang Daeho stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the dark space ahead. His face was covered with scars from old battles, and metal parts replaced his left eye and right arm. He had waited 400 years for this moment. The time had finally come. Behind him, thousands of human ships moved through space like deadly shadows. They were invisible to enemy eyes, hidden by technology that the galaxy had never seen before. Each ship carried weapons that could destroy entire planets. Each soldier on board had been trained to fight wars that lasted centuries. "Admiral," said Dr. Park So-min, walking up beside him. She was a small woman with bright eyes that missed nothing. "Our scouts report that the Federation still thinks we are weak. They remember us as the humans who ran away long ago." Kang smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "Good. Let them think that. It will make this easier." Far away, on a space station at the edge of what used to be human territory, alien creatures worked at their computers. They were called the Vorthak, and they looked like giant lizards that walked on two legs. Their leader, Sektar, was reading reports about strange energy readings near Earth. "Sir," said a younger Vorthak, "we are getting weird signals from the human area. Should we check it out?" Sektar laughed, showing his sharp teeth. "The humans? Those weak creatures disappeared 400 years ago. If any are still alive, they are probably living in caves and eating dirt. Do not waste my time with this." But Sektar was wrong. Very, very wrong. The humans had not disappeared. They had been waiting. They had been learning. They had been growing stronger. Captain Lee Tae-wook sat in his small, fast ship called the Ghost Dancer. He was young for a captain, only 35 years old, but he could fly his ship in ways that seemed impossible. His ship could appear and disappear like a ghost. It could fly through solid rock. It could move faster than light itself. "Captain," his computer said in a soft voice, "we are approaching the Federation patrol ships. 3 Vorthak destroyers, just like Admiral Kang said there would be." Lee smiled. "Perfect. Time to say hello to our old friends." The 3 Vorthak ships were floating in space, their crews bored and lazy. They had been guarding this empty area for months. Nothing ever happened here. The ships were old and slow. Their weapons had not been updated in decades. Suddenly, their alarms began to scream. "What is happening?" shouted the Vorthak commander. "I see nothing on our screens." But something was there. Something big. Something terrible. One by one, massive human ships began to appear around the Vorthak patrol. They were larger than anything the Vorthak had ever seen. They were black as space itself, covered with weapons that hummed with deadly energy. The ships looked like they had been built by gods of war. "Impossible," whispered the Vorthak commander. "The humans do not have ships like this. They cannot have ships like this." The human ships did not fire. They just waited. The Vorthak tried to run, but their engines would not work. They tried to call for help, but their radios were silent. They were trapped like small animals surrounded by hunters. Then a voice came over their speakers. It was calm and cold, speaking in perfect Vorthak language. "This is Admiral Kang Daeho of the Terran Expeditionary Force. You are in human space now. You will leave and never come back. Tell your leaders that the children of Earth have returned." On Earth, President Choi Min-ho sat in his office, looking at reports from across the galaxy. He was an old man now, but his mind was still sharp as a knife. He had spent 50 years planning this moment. "Sir," said his assistant, "Admiral Kang reports that the first contact was successful. The Vorthak patrol has been sent home with our message." President Choi nodded. "Good. Now they know we are back. Soon the whole galaxy will know." The president walked to his window and looked out at the Earth below. It was beautiful beyond words. The cities floated in the air like jewels. The oceans sparkled with life. The forests grew tall and green, filled with creatures that had never existed before. This was what humans could do when they were left alone. This was what they became when the galaxy forgot about them. 400 years ago, the other species had betrayed humanity. They had promised friendship and peace, but when humans needed help, they had turned away. They had called humans weak and primitive. They had laughed when humans left the galaxy. They were not laughing now. Dr. Park So-min worked in her laboratory, studying samples from alien worlds. She knew the biology of every species in the galaxy better than they knew themselves. She knew their weaknesses. She knew their fears. The Vorthak are strong, but they heal slowly, she said to her assistant. The cliques breed fast, but they cannot think for themselves. The Luminari are made of energy, but they fear the dark. Humans had spent 4 centuries learning everything about their former enemies. They had watched them from the shadows. They had studied their wars, their technology, their cultures. They knew exactly how to defeat each species. But Admiral Kang had other plans. He did not want to simply defeat them. He wanted to change everything. Dr. Park, he said over the ship's communication system, are you ready for the next phase? Yes, Admiral, she replied. Our agents are already in place on their worlds. They have been there for years, waiting for your signal. The humans had not just built better ships and weapons. They had learned to move unseen through alien societies. They had learned to look like other species. They had learned to think like them, to act like them, to become them. While the galaxy slept, human spies had spread across every world. They worked in alien governments. They commanded alien armies. They controlled alien businesses. The galaxy belonged to humans now, and nobody knew it yet. Captain Lee received new orders from Admiral Kang. Take your squadron to the Nexari Crystal worlds. Let them see what human pilots can do. Lee grinned. The Nexari thought they were the best pilots in the galaxy because they could control their ships with their minds. They were about to learn that human pilots did not need minds to fly. They had something better. They had souls that burned with the fire of war. As the human fleet moved deeper into galaxy territory, alarms began to sound on 1,000 worlds. Federation leaders who had forgotten that humans ever existed suddenly remembered. But their memories were old and faded. They remembered humans as weak creatures who ran away when things got hard. They did not remember that humans were the species that never gave up. They did not remember that humans grew stronger when they were hurt. They did not remember that humans were the only species that looked at the impossible and said, "Let us try anyway." The galaxy was about to remember. Admiral Kang De-ho would make sure of that. His fleet moved through the darkness between stars, silent as death itself. Behind them, Earth waited, patient and ready. Ahead of them, their enemies slept, dreaming of peace and safety. The dream was about to end. The children of Earth had come home, and they brought the fire of 400 years of anger with them. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. Colonel Bei Jin-woo stood on the frozen ground of Kepler 442b, watching 50,000 Clix warriors march toward his position. The insect-like aliens moved in perfect lines, their weapons gleaming in the pale light of the distant sun. They had come to destroy the small human outpost on this ice world. Behind Colonel Bei stood only 99 other human soldiers. They called themselves the Silent Reapers, and they were the deadliest warriors humanity had ever created. Each one could fight in any environment, from the vacuum of space to the crushing depths of ocean worlds. "Colonel," said Sergeant Park, Hyun-woo through his helmet radio, 50,000 enemies coming our way. Should we call for backup? Bei smiled inside his armor. "No, Sergeant. We are enough." The Clix had learned nothing from the defeats of the Vorthak Empire. They still thought that numbers meant victory. They still believed that a bigger army would always win. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Far above the planet, engineer Nam Soo-jin worked in the laboratory of a human science ship. She was building weapons that did not just destroy matter, but erased the very possibility that their targets had ever existed. These weapons reached back through time and space to make their enemies never have been born. "The quantum erasure cannon is ready," she reported to Admiral Kang. "One shot will remove an entire enemy fleet from reality. They will not die. They will simply never have existed." Admiral Kang nodded, but he did not give the order to fire. Not yet. First, he wanted the galaxy to understand what they were dealing with. He wanted them to see what humans could do with simple weapons and small numbers. On the ice world below, the Click's army reached the human position. Their commander, a giant insect with 4 arms and glowing eyes, raised his weapon and screamed the order to attack. 50,000 alien warriors charged across the frozen ground, their weapons firing beams of superheated plasma. The air filled with deadly energy as they tried to burn the humans from the face of the planet. Colonel Bay and his silent reapers did not run. They did not hide. They simply stood their ground and began to fight. The humans moved like ghosts in the swirling snow. They appeared and disappeared, striking from every direction. Their weapons fired bullets that could punch through tank armor. Their movements were so fast that the Clicks could barely see them. But speed and strength were not the humans' greatest advantages. Their greatest advantage was that they could think. The Clicks were a hive mind. They shared one brain among all their warriors. This made them strong when fighting simple enemies, but it made them weak when fighting humans. Humans could predict what the hive mind would do because it always did the same things. One by one, the Click's warriors began to fall. They tried to surround the humans, but the humans were no longer where they expected them to be. They tried to use their superior numbers, but the humans turned their numbers into a weakness. Sergeant Park took position on a hill overlooking the battle. His sniper rifle could kill enemies from 10 kilometers away. Each shot went through multiple Click's warriors, dropping dozens with every pull of the trigger. "Sergeant," Colonel Bay's voice crackled over the radio. "How many left?" Park looked through his scope at the scattered alien forces. "About half, sir. But they are starting to break formation. I think they are getting scared." The Clicks did not understand fear the way other species did, but they understood death. And they were dying faster than they could count. Colonel Bay activated his armor's special systems. Suddenly he seemed to be everywhere at once. The Clicks saw him in 10 different places, moving in ways that seemed impossible. Their hive mind could not process what it was seeing. "Impossible," screamed the Click's commander. "How can one human be in so many places?" The answer was simple. He was not in many places. He was using technology that made light bend around him, creating false images that confused his enemies. While they shot at shadows, he killed them from behind. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, diplomat Oh Sang-hee walked through the crystal halls of the Nexari homeworld. She looked like a small, harmless human woman. The crystalline aliens towered over her, their bodies made of living diamond that sparkled in the light. "You cannot stop us," said the Nexari Emperor, his voice ringing like breaking glass. "We have weapons that can change the laws of physics. We can make your ships forget how to fly. We can make your weapons forget how to fire." Oh smiled politely. "That is very impressive. Would you like to see what our weapons can do?" She pressed a button on her small device. High above the planet, Engineer Nam's new weapon fired once. The beam of energy was invisible and silent. It did not explode. It did not burn. It simply touched the Nexari moon and made it disappear. Not destroyed. Not broken apart. Simply gone, as if it had never existed at all. The Nexari Emperor stared at the empty space where his moon had been. "What did you do?" "We removed it from reality," Oh explained calmly. "Your moon never existed. It was never born from cosmic dust. It never formed in orbit around your world. We reached back through time and space and erased the very possibility of its existence." The Emperor's crystal body began to crack with fear. "If you can do that to a moon, you can do it to anything." "Yes," Oh agreed. "We can do it to planets. We can do it to stars. We can do it to entire species. Would you like us to demonstrate on your homeworld?" Back on the ice planet, the Battle of Kepler 442b was almost over. Of the 50,000 Clicks warriors who had attacked, only a few hundred remained. They huddled together in the snow, their weapons empty, their courage broken. Colonel Bay walked toward them across the battlefield. His armor was not even scratched. None of his soldiers had been hurt. They had faced odds of 500 to 1 and had won without losing a single human life. "Tell your hive mind what you have seen here," he said to the surviving Clicks. Tell them that humans are not the weak species you remember. Tell them that we have become something new. The clique's warriors ran away across the frozen ground, their insect legs carrying them as fast as they could go. They would return to their hive worlds with stories that no one would believe. Stories of humans who fought like gods and won battles that should have been impossible. Admiral Kang received reports from across the galaxy. Human forces were winning everywhere. The Luminari energy beings had tried to drain power from human ships only to discover that human technology fed on energy attacks. The deep maw sea creatures had tried to flood human colonies, only to find that humans could breathe underwater better than fish. Admiral, Dr. Park Somin reported, "We have analyzed all 7 alien species. Each one has fundamental weaknesses that we can exploit. The Vorthak heal slowly, so biological weapons work well against them. The Zephyrians are gas-based, so we can simply compress them into bottles." But Admiral Kang was not interested in weaknesses anymore. He was interested in strengths. "Dr. Park," he said, "I want you to study something else. I want you to find out what each species is good at, what makes them special, what gifts they could bring to a better galaxy." Dr. Park looked surprised. "Sir, I thought we were trying to defeat them." "We have defeated them," Kang replied. "The war is over. Now comes the harder part. Now we have to build something better." On Earth, President Choi Min-ho stood before the Global Assembly. Representatives from every human world sat in the Great Hall, waiting to hear his words. "My fellow humans," he began, "we have returned to the galaxy our ancestors left 400 years ago. We have shown the alien species that we are no longer the weak creatures they remember. We have proven that humanity cannot be ignored or forgotten." The assembly cheered. Humans across the galaxy had waited centuries for this moment. But now, President Choi continued, "We face a choice. We can rule through fear as conquerors and tyrants, or we can rule through wisdom as guardians and teachers. We can show these species what they could become if they were willing to learn." Engineer Nam Soo-jin completed her work on the ultimate weapon. It was not a gun or a bomb. It was a machine that could reshape reality itself, turning dead worlds into gardens, making barren systems bloom with life. "President Choi," she reported, "the Genesis engine is ready. We can now terraform entire star systems in a matter of weeks. We can create perfect worlds for any species that wants to live in peace." The galaxy held its breath. The human fleets had stopped attacking. Their weapons had gone silent. Their ships hung motionless in space, waiting. Diplomat O stood before the emergency session of the old Galactic Federation. The representatives of all 7 alien species sat in their great chamber, their faces filled with fear and confusion. "You have defeated us," said the Vorthak speaker, his voice heavy with shame. "What do you want from us? What tribute must we pay? How many worlds must we surrender?" O smiled gently. "We do not want tribute. We do not want your worlds. We want something much more difficult to give." "What?" asked the luminary representative, her energy form flickering with anxiety. "We want you to trust us," O replied. "We want you to believe that we came back not to destroy you, but to help you become better than you ever thought possible." The alien representatives looked at each other in confusion. This was not how conquerors usually talked. 400 years ago, O continued, you betrayed our trust. You called us weak and primitive. You laughed when we left the galaxy. 1 year had passed since humanity's return to the galaxy, and everything had changed. Empress Lee Da-Yun stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the massive space habitat that served as the capital of the new Terran Protectorate. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from every species in the galaxy, coming and going in peaceful harmony. "Your Majesty," said her aide, approaching with the daily reports. "The Vorthak delegation has arrived for the trade negotiations. The Clique's hive queens are requesting permission to establish art colonies on 3 more worlds, and the Nexari have completed their first terraforming project using our techniques." Lee smiled. A year ago, these species had been her enemies. Now they were her partners in building something the galaxy had never seen before. Grand Admiral Joe, Minsuk walked through the corridors of Unity Station, watching humans and aliens work together on projects that would have been impossible for any single species to complete. Vorthak engineers were teaching human children how to build structures that could grow and repair themselves. Luminary energy beings were showing human scientists how to create art from pure light. Click's biotechnicians were working with human doctors to cure diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Admiral, called Professor Seo Junho, the human philosopher who had written the new Galactic Constitution, the Deep Maw representatives want to discuss the Water Rights Charter for the ocean worlds. They are very pleased with how we have protected their spawning grounds, Joe nodded. Every species had something valuable to contribute, and humans had learned to help them share their gifts with each other. The Deep Maw could purify oceans that had been poisoned for centuries. The Zephyrians could control weather patterns to prevent natural disasters. Even the smallest contributions were valued and celebrated. On the former Vorthak homeworld, now called New Harmony, a remarkable transformation had taken place. The gray military cities had been replaced by beautiful communities where all species lived together. Children who were half human and half alien played in parks where flowers sang lullabies and trees grew toys for anyone who asked politely. Master Sergeant Park Hyun-woo, now retired from military service, worked as a teacher in one of these schools. His students included young Vorthak learning human poetry, Click's children discovering individual creativity, and Nexari crystals being taught to appreciate music. Teacher Park, said a young Vorthak girl, raising her scaly hand. My grandmother says that humans used to be weak and afraid, but you seem very strong to me. Why did she think you were weak? Park sat down among his students, thinking carefully about his answer. Your grandmother was not wrong, little one. Humans were weak when we first came to the galaxy. We were afraid of many things. We made mistakes and we failed often. The children looked confused. Their human teacher did not seem weak at all. But weakness is not a bad thing, Park continued. When you are weak, you learn to be clever. When you are afraid, you learn to be careful. When you fail, you learn to try again. Humans became strong because we started weak. Dr. Kwon Mi-young had established the Galactic Restoration Institute, where scientists from every species worked together to heal worlds that had been damaged by centuries of war and neglect. Her latest project was the resurrection of an entire star system that had been destroyed in an ancient conflict. The quantum restoration matrix is stable, she reported to Empress Lee. We can bring back the 3 planets that were lost, along with all the life forms that used to exist there. The Thornweaver delegation is very excited to see their ancestral home reborn. This was the kind of miracle that happened regularly now. Human technology, combined with alien knowledge, could fix almost anything that had been broken. They could bring back extinct species, restore dead worlds, and even repair holes in space itself. But the greatest miracle was not technological, it was social. For the first time in galactic history, wars had ended completely, not because one species had conquered all the others, but because everyone had found better ways to solve their problems. The Terran Protectorate did not rule through force or fear. It ruled through making life so good for everyone that no one wanted to fight anymore. Empress, said the Zephyrian ambassador, his gaseous form swirling with contentment. My people have been discussing your proposal for the atmospheric engineering project. We would be honored to help create breathable air for the new colony worlds. Lee bowed respectfully. Even though she was the most powerful being in the galaxy, she treated every species with dignity and respect. Your people's gift with atmospheric science is beyond compare. The colonists will sing your praises for generations. Grand Admiral Joe received a communication from the edge of the galaxy, where human exploration fleets were making contact with species that had never been part of the old Federation. These new civilizations were amazed to discover that the galaxy had learned to live in peace. Admiral, reported Captain Kim Dae-won from the exploration ship Curiosity, we have made contact with the Stellar Gardeners, a species that has been hiding in the galactic rim for thousands of years. They create living starships from modified asteroids. They want to share their technology with us. Joe smiled. This was how the new galaxy worked. Every new species they met brought new knowledge and new possibilities. Instead of competing and fighting, everyone shared and grew together. Professor Seo had spent the year traveling to every world in the Protectorate, teaching alien philosophers about human concepts like individual freedom and personal responsibility. But he had also learned from them, discovering alien ideas about community harmony and collective wisdom. The beautiful thing, he told a gathering of students from 12 different species, is that we do not all have to think the same way. Humans value independence, cliques value unity, Vorthak value honor, and Luminari value enlightenment. All of these values are good. All of them make the galaxy stronger. The old Galactic Federation had tried to make all species follow the same rules and think the same thoughts. The Terran Protectorate celebrated differences and helped each species become the best version of themselves. On Earth, President Choi, Minho, now retired, tended a garden where plants from every world in the galaxy grew together in impossible harmony. Vorthak flame flowers bloomed beside Click's ice crystals. Nexari singing stones provided music for deep maw coral that danced in pools of liquid starlight. Grandfather Choi, said his great-granddaughter, a little girl with eyes that sparkled like galaxies, tell me again about the old days when all the species were enemies. Choi picked up the child and set her on his lap. It seems impossible now, doesn't it? But back then everyone was afraid. They thought that if another species became strong, it would make them weak. They did not understand that when everyone becomes strong together, the whole galaxy becomes a better place. The child nodded seriously. Is that why humans left the galaxy? To learn how to make everyone strong together? That is exactly right, little star, Choi said, hugging her close. We had to go away to learn how to come back the right way. Empress Li stood before the Grand Assembly. Representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered to celebrate the first anniversary of the Terran Protectorate. The Great Hall was a work of art itself, with walls made from Nexari crystal that showed images of all the worlds they protected, floors of Vorthak stone that told the history of their friendship, and a ceiling of pure luminary energy that painted patterns of light across everything below. 1 year ago, she began, humanity returned to a galaxy torn by fear and conflict. Today we celebrate a galaxy united by hope and cooperation. We have not achieved this through conquest or domination. We have achieved it by helping every species discover their own greatness. The assembled representatives cheered. These were beings who had once been enemies, now united in building something beautiful together. The old galaxy was ruled by those who took what they wanted, Lee continued. The new galaxy is guided by those who give what they can. Every species has gifts to share. Every world has wonders to offer. Every individual has something valuable to contribute. Dr. Park So-min, now the head of the Galactic Science Council, presented the latest achievements. Diseases that had plagued species for millennia had been cured. Technologies that had seemed impossible were now commonplace. Worlds that had been barren for millions of years now bloomed with life. But the greatest achievement was not written in any report. It was visible in the faces of the beings gathered in that hall. They were no longer afraid of each other. They no longer saw differences as threats. They saw them as opportunities to learn and grow. The humans have given us something more valuable than technology, said the Clique's Prime Queen, her voice harmonizing with the voices of billions of her children across the galaxy. They have given us the idea that we can all become better than we were. As the celebration continued into the night, fireworks bloomed in the space around Unity Station. But these were not ordinary fireworks. They were living artworks created by artists from every species, expressing their hopes for the future in colors and patterns that had never existed before. Grand Admiral Zhou watched from his office as the celebration continued. His job had changed completely over the past year. Fleet Admiral Shin Yun-su watched from her command ship as millions of human civilian vessels emerged from folded space. These were not warships filled with soldiers. These were colony ships filled with families, scientists, artists, and builders. The second wave had arrived. Admiral, reported her aide, all civilian fleets are in position. 2 million ships carrying 50 billion humans, ready to begin colonization operations. Shin nodded. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Now humanity had to prove that they could build something better than what they had destroyed. On the surface of what used to be a Vorthak military world, Master Sergeant Park Hyun-woo supervised the construction of New Seoul, the first human city built in alien space in 4 centuries. But this was not like the old cities humans used to build. This city grew from the ground like a living thing. Dr. Kwon Mi-young knelt beside a small device she had placed in the barren soil. "Terraforming sequence initiated," she announced. "Full atmospheric conversion will be complete in 6 hours. Plant life will begin appearing within 12 hours. The entire ecosystem will be established within 1 week." The Vorthak prisoners of war watched in amazement as their dead world began to transform. Grass sprouted from the dusty ground. Trees grew from saplings to giants in minutes. Rivers flowed where there had been only dry channels. The air itself became sweet and clean. "Impossible," whispered the Vorthak general who had once commanded this world. "It takes thousands of years to change a planet like this. How are you doing it?" Master Sergeant Park walked over to the alien officer. "We learned how to work with nature instead of against it. Your people tried to force worlds to change. We ask them politely and they say yes. The truth was more complex, but not by much. Human science had advanced beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. They could speak to planets in the language of quantum mechanics. They could convince molecules to rearrange themselves into new patterns. They could make entire worlds want to become beautiful." Fleet Admiral Shin received reports from colony sites across the galaxy. On every world where humans had landed, the same miracle was happening. Dead planets bloomed with life. Poisoned atmospheres cleaned themselves. Broken ecosystems healed and grew strong. But the most amazing thing was not what humans were doing to the planets. It was what they were doing with the alien species. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the Click's home world. They are requesting permission to send observers to our colony sites." Shin smiled. "Permission granted. Tell them they can send as many observers as they want. Tell them they are welcome to stay and help if they like the work we are doing." The Clicks had been the most aggressive of the alien species. Their hive mind had driven them to conquer and consume everything they touched. But something about the human colonies was changing them. On the world humans now called New Garden, a group of Clicks workers had volunteered to help with the terraforming project. Dr. Kwon watched in fascination as the insect-like aliens worked alongside human engineers. "Dr. Kwon," said the lead Clicks worker, speaking in perfect human language, "we have never seen anything like this before. Your people are not just building cities. You are growing them. You are making the planet itself happy." It was true. The cities humans built seemed to grow from the ground like flowers. Their buildings were alive, breathing with the rhythms of the world around them. Their streets followed the natural patterns of wind and water. Their lights came from bioluminescent plants that glowed with soft, beautiful colors. "How do you do it?" the Clicks worker asked. "How do you make dead worlds sing with life?" Dr. Kwon knelt down to be at eye level with the alien creature. "We listen to what the world wants to become, and then we help it get there. Would you like to learn how?" The Clicks worker's compound eyes sparkled with interest. "Yes, please. The hive mind wants to know. We have spent so many years destroying worlds. We would like to learn how to heal them instead." This was happening everywhere humans went. The alien species that had once been enemies were becoming students. They watched human scientists with wonder. They asked questions about human technology with the curiosity of children. Master Sergeant Park walked through the growing city of New Seoul, watching human families set up their new homes. Children ran through streets that sparkled with embedded crystals. Artists painted murals on living walls that changed color with the time of day. Musicians played concerts in amphitheaters carved from singing stones. But the most beautiful sight was the mixed groups of humans and aliens working together. On construction projects, Vorthak engineers helped design buildings that could withstand any weather. Nixari crystal workers created decorations that bent light into rainbow patterns. Even the gas-based Zephyrians contributed, using their ability to control weather to bring gentle rains to new gardens. "Sergeant," called a young human boy, "look what the clicks taught me." The child held up a small sculpture made from what looked like living metal. It moved and flowed like water, forming different shapes as the boy concentrated on it. "That is very impressive," Park said, kneeling down to examine the artwork. "What did you make it from?" "Click's biometal," the boy said proudly. "They grow it in their bodies and then shape it with their minds. They are teaching all the human kids how to do it." Park smiled. This was what President Choi had dreamed of when he planned humanity's return. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not domination, but friendship. Fleet Admiral Shin received an urgent communication from Earth. She expected it to be new orders or reports of problems. Instead, it was an invitation. "Admiral," President Choi's image said on her screen, "the alien leaders are coming to Earth for the first time in 400 years. They want to see what humanity has become during our isolation. I want you to escort them personally." Shin felt a moment of nervousness. Earth had changed so much during the centuries of isolation that it might be shocking to alien eyes. The planet was no longer just a world. It had become something like a work of art. The delegation of alien leaders arrived in a small fleet of their best ships. Shin met them at the edge of the solar system with an honor guard of human vessels. But these were not the warships that had conquered the galaxy. These were celebration ships, decorated with lights and flowers, filled with music and laughter. As they flew toward Earth, the alien leaders stared out their windows in amazement. The entire solar system had been transformed. Mars was green and blue, covered with cities that floated like clouds. Venus sparkled with orbital habitats that looked like jeweled necklaces. Even the asteroids had been turned into gardens that spun slowly in the darkness of space. "Incredible," whispered the Vorthak Emperor, his voice full of awe. "How many humans live in this system?" "About 12 billion on Earth itself," Shin replied. "Another 50 billion in the orbital cities and asteroid habitats, and about 200 billion more on the colony worlds throughout the galaxy." The luminary representative flickered with surprise. 200 billion? But we thought there were only a few million humans in the galaxy. "That was 400 years ago," Shin explained. "We have been very busy since then." As they approached Earth itself, the alien leaders fell silent. The planet was beautiful beyond any description. The oceans sparkled with floating cities that looked like flowers on the water. The continents were covered with forests that grew in perfect spirals and circles, creating patterns that could be seen from space. The sky was filled with flying creatures that had never existed in nature, but had been designed by human artists to be living poems. "This is not possible," breathed the Nexari queen, her crystal body refracting the light from Earth into rainbow patterns. "A world cannot be so beautiful. It would take millions of years to create such perfection." President Choi met them at the spaceport in New Tokyo, a city that floated peacefully above the clouds. He was an old man now, but his eyes still sparkled with the dreams of his youth. "Welcome to Earth," he said simply. "Welcome to what humanity has become." He took them on a tour of the planet that lasted 3 days. They saw cities where every building was a work of art. They met children who could speak with animals that had been designed to be companions and teachers. They watched artists who painted with light itself, creating pictures that moved and danced in the air. But the most amazing thing they saw was the humans themselves. These were not the frightened, primitive creatures that had left the galaxy centuries ago. These were beings who had learned to shape reality with their minds, to create beauty from nothing, to turn dreams into solid matter. "How?" the Deep Maw Emperor asked, his tentacles curling with confusion. "How did you become this? How did you learn to do impossible things?" President Choi sat with the alien leaders in his garden, a place where flowers sang soft melodies and butterflies had wings made of living stained glass. "We had 400 years to think about what we wanted to become," he said quietly. "We decided that we did not want to be conquerors or tyrants. We wanted to be gardeners. We wanted to plant seeds of beauty and watch them grow." The Zephyrian Ambassador, a being made of living gas, swirled with emotions that had no names. But the power you have shown us, the weapons that can erase entire worlds from reality, why build such terrible,